Excellent, Adrian. Thank you very much for joining us in this project, and thank you very much for your time. And
very welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And so let's talk about yourself. Tell about your experience in the real estate industry and the PropTech ecosystem, please.
Well, I've been in the real estate or the PropTech business for quite a while now. Well, even my family has. We go back on 40 years now. We started initially developing a computer-aided design at the beginning of the 80s. Then moved on to facilities management or software for facility management 20 years ago. I, for myself, entered the family business around 11 years ago now, by starting my first startup that focused on energy management for real estate and for technical installations. The real prop tech came in, I'd say, around 18 months, 2 years ago, when we started the latest addition to our group, the Framence. And that is a very, very typical prop tech, focusing on reality capture, focusing on creating a digital twin of the built world, basically. So that's my track record. And of course, prop tech is, yes, it's a new wording, it's a new phrase, but having been in the software business for that long, we've always done basically prop tech, if you want to know.
Yeah, sure. So, and then why and how you create a company?
Why and how? Well, why, of course, is why we put it as a new startup. Quite simply, the existing business we do are very, very much focused on projects, on software projects, which just simply don't scale. We've got very, very highly specialized solutions for each and every one of our customers, while Framence is more a standardized product that has potential to scale globally. So we founded that as a new addition, as a single company. And of course, we wanted to bring in externals, or have the potential to bring in VCs, have the potential to bring in external investors. So we said we need to have that in its own environment, its own company. We started pretty much, well, we initiated the development that went on about a year prior to starting the company. It was officially incorporated, I think, February last year. So after we've been doing quite a bit of development, and we're now sort of bootstrapping on our existing companies and are working closely together with them to get some traction going.
Excellent. And of course, people can go to your website, but in your words, what does your company do, and what are your products and solutions?
Well, in short, what we're doing is we are focusing on reality capture, or we're doing reality capture using simple off-the-shelf camera equipment, such as DSLR, such as drones, such as mobile phones, and combine those photos with AI as well as mathematics to turn that into what we call a photorealistic digital twin. So we're using simple photos to turn that into a photographic 3D representation of the built world. The main benefit of using photos using AI is, of course, that we can cut the costs by around 95% compared to laser scanners or 3D modeling. And of course, you can use anybody who can carry around a camera to capture reality, and of course to constantly recapture. Because what we've seen is that in order to have a digital twin, that thing has to be up to date. You have to constantly recapture environments. The built world is constantly changing. So unless you have a very, very continuous documentation cycle, your twin will be outdated within weeks. So the problem is you have to have that cheap in order to have these kind of documentation cycles. Product is in the end, it's a web or a browser application that, just like Google Street View, allows you to wander through your environment, and of course click on certain assets you see and then pull up information about that. So it's not just, it's basically, it's a Google Street View for your environment with all the information on your assets you have in there as well.
Wow. And the key points of differentiation of your company?
Well, differentiation to others, digital twin is nothing new, neither is reality capture. What we've done is we've taken new methods, we're taking the photos, we have made it economical to do. That's basically the main differentiation to all the others out there, that we don't rely on laser scanners, we don't rely on specialists taking the doing the capturing. We are allowing anybody to do so, and we're allowing anybody to do that on their own accord and do that themselves. So we basically provide the software and the customer can do the rest themselves. They don't really need us, they just need our platform.
Wow. And considering the solutions and products you are developing and expect to have in the future, or what people and future clients can expect from you?
Lots and lots more. Well, basically, what we've done the last 2 years or so, we have created the technology, we've got the core, most of the stuff is there, and we're now enhancing on that, furthering development even more. And the idea is to sort of jump onto the bandwagon of the single source of truth, but we more called it a single interface of information. The idea is you have the Google Street View approach, and you bring in all the information you have and reference it in that model, reference it in that geometry, because in my personal opinion at least, the notion of the single source of truth is not very feasible, especially since BIM is one of those single source of truth ideas. Most information on assets, on real estates, on processes is stored and is managed in legacy systems run and operated by specialists. And BIM is not going to make SAP, ServiceNow, Salesforce obsolete by simply being BIM. This information will always be there in the legacy systems, will be maintained in those legacy systems. And our idea is to bring that information, cross-link it, reference it in our environment. So if you at some point need a certain information on a pump, for example, you can simply click on the pump you see in the photo, and then we bring in all the information you have on the environment, but not touching the legacy systems that are there. So you have the specialist systems being there, being maintained by specialists, being run by specialists, because they have processes in there. They might have some certain billing process and so on and so forth. You're not going to change that. It's just a matter of grabbing the information from that point when you need it and bring it into an environment and bring it into user interface that a normal person.
Adrian? Adrian? Adrian?
Just handle under that.
1 second, Adrian.
I can still hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. And the last word I heard from you was normal person.
Oh, sorry. Let me think a second.
Want me to rephrase the phrase?
I'll rephrase. Basically, what I was saying was that what we're doing is we are using that very easy to use Google Street View-like approach and bring in all the information from specialist systems that are stored somewhere in a database, somewhere in some sort of legacy system, and pull that up and combine that with that easy-to-use Google Street View approach. So whenever you need information about a certain pump, you can just click on it, bring up the information from wherever it's stored, and take a look at it while looking at the photo. So we're sort of enabling you to grab all the information you need from wherever it is, but use only one single environment.
That's a very difficult and huge innovation, I think, for the
Thank you.
for the construction industry that's so conservative. Well, in which countries do you operate today, and where do you plan to take your business in the future?
At the moment, we're mainly focused on German-speaking Europe, as in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, but that's basically due to the fact that I've been active in those countries for the last 20-25 years. And we started as a bootstrapping, started where we know our ways around, where we have existing customers. Having said that, we're building up a partner network globally at the moment. We've got partners over in Spain, we've got one in France, we've got one in Hungary. We are signing a contract with a partner over in Hong Kong. And if it wasn't for the current situation, I was meant to be in the US at the moment. and have a look at the potential partner network there as well. So our idea is, of course, to create a partner network globally who act as implementation partners, act as sales partners. That's our next step. And of course, I still have the idea of, have the notion of having a dependency either over in Asia or in the US, or ideally both.
Nice. And well, can you tell us a successful case with a client of yours?
Quite a few, luckily for us. One of them, for example, is Hoffmann La Roche, as in the Swiss pharmaceutical. They are using our technology for construction documentation mainly, and what they're doing is they're actually one of our development partners, and they have one of their construction managers walking around on their construction site in southern Germany and taking photos documenting the progress every 2 to 3 weeks roughly. They're uploading the photos into our software, and they're using it mainly to cross-check for deviations as planned, as built, finding discrepancies on the construction site, what they're meant to be doing. And one important thing is, they found quite a few deviations, some of them potentially very, very costly in the long run. An interesting one was, for example, the facade planning. The facade they had planned to go on that building in the end was never going to fit. They noticed that by looking at the photos, by taking the measurements needed on the photos, noticed, hold on, something gone wrong there. So they could replan, reconstruct the facade before it was actually delivered to construction site. Otherwise, they would have noticed it when the facade had been on the construction site and not being able to fix that thing on. Another one is, for example, BASF, as in the chemicals. And they're using our software more on a operational, on a technical operations approach. And what they're doing is, especially in the current situation with everybody being in home office, everybody working from wherever they are, they're enabling their technical crews, their staff, to take a look at the real environment, to basically go on site virtually in order to find out information, or to have a look at certain situations, to take measurements. So they're bringing basically the on-site environment into the home office, just like you do when you take a look at something using Google Street View. So they're using that approach. Just simply, they can't go on site at the moment, so they're using our system to do so anyways.
Interesting. And your target clients are big companies, industrial companies, big offices, big buildings, or you are looking for residential as well?
No, we could also do residential. We even have a little side stream that looks at residentials, but that's not our main target. We usually work with large corporations. We usually work with manufacturers, chemicals, pharmaceuticals. Being German, of course, automotive to quite an extent. But typically the larger ones, the medium to large sized, that's the ones that are interesting for us. But the technology could also work in residential areas where it's more a documentation part. In the future, yes, it's an idea we're having in the back of our minds. It was just we've always been active with the larger ones, with the corporations. So we decided just to stick to those because you know the people in there anyways.
Yeah. And what are you looking for at the moment? Investment, expansion, consolidation, growth?
Well, investment is always good. More money is always good. Growth, of course, as well. No, at the moment, as I said, we've spent the last 2.5 years very much on building up the technology, especially in our field of business and in the B2B area working. You need to have a solution that works. You need to have a solution that actually has a certain benefit. So we needed to be sure that what we're doing will actually work, that we have a certain market fit, and that's what we've done the last 2.5 years or so. Now that we have our product, now that we're way past seed stage and everything, we're pretty much now looking for Series A. We've got the first good customers in Germany, in Europe, and we're now looking to go globally. And that's basically where we need money, where we need strong partners to help us. Because we have a good product here in our hands. We know there is a certain need for that out there, We know quite a few people have tried to play around with reality capture. There is a need for that. It just failed because of the costs so far. And we have the solution for that. So we are now looking for somebody or a certain investment to kickstart that thing globally.
Wow, that's good. And well, now I'd like to understand a bit more about the overview of the PropTech ecosystem. Your opinion, if the real estate market is seen as very conservative in relation to other sectors, does this also occur in Germany and German-speaking countries that you work?
Yeah. I think it's the same all over the world. A good thing for us being the traditional real estate sector is only one of our sidelines. Our main core is, of course, the manufacturers, the large corporations, which happen to have real estate. So that's our niche in that sense, or our core target. But yes, of course, real estate is a very, very traditional market. It's a very, very, I wouldn't say slow moving. I'd say very, very cautious market. Cautious in the notions that, unlike in other fields of business, you don't often have a second try. If something goes wrong, it tends to get very, very costly when it's gone wrong. So that's why real estate tends to be cautious, tends to figure out, will that actually work, what we're doing here? The margins are not exactly the highest in the business, so they tend to be fairly cautious. They are, in that sense, slow moving. They want to know when they do something, when they invest in something, when they do take the step, that step will actually work. And what we also see is it's not a fast moving thing, though. Our business relationships, we've got customers in our other business, customer relationships lasting 20, 25, 30 years. So once you're with them, it's a long-term thing. It's a long-term relationship. It's not the one-off. It's not the one-off customer you have typically.
Yeah, totally agree. And well, what do you think is the role of startups and new technologies on this change of mentality? Maybe if you need.
That's a good question. I think it's of course to bring in new ideas, bring in new technology, bring in the ability to think outside the box. That's something that's very, very important for large real estate, of course. The corporations, well, they used to have, or they might even still have certain labs, but they're all sort of stuck in their day-to-day business in their own method, how they've always done things. And that's, I think, something where a startup can come and say, guys, we've got an awesome idea. Let's talk about that. So bring in newer technology, bring in new ideas. That's a very, very big role of startups to foster technology, to bring technology into those existing environments. Though having said that, of course, always keep in mind that you're talking B2B, you're talking long-term relationships. That's the certain you have to keep in mind those restrictions you're going to have in real estate, while still bringing new technology. But I guess that's the same for any B2B market you're looking at. It's not the typical B2C where you can just box and ship. It's more a long-term relationship where you need to invest in.
Yeah, and well, when I talk to some clients and partners, they say, well, the Airbnb was invented by 2-3 guys, and the Booking.com and the reward company, that's not a very good example at the moment, but they say, what keeps big companies away from the development of products and solutions, just like startups, in your opinion?
Reluctancy to fail. What you have is that's a typical thing. I see that. Well, we've done that ourselves. We've started our own little development lab or research lab, and I told them, guys, feel free to fuck up, feel free to fail. I don't care. Just try it. Just try and test. But these kind of things, these kind of approaches, you don't do in your day-to-day business. You want the day-to-day business to work, and if that fails, you've got large problems going on. So while a startup is allowed to fail, is allowed to try new things, to try new ways, when you look at when you look at statistics, most of the companies not going to survive the first 5 years or so, about 90% or so. So quite a few of them are going to fail. And that's something startups can do. That's something you don't want to do too often if you are a corporate. So you much rather throw some money at a startup and see whether it's going to survive or not. So this reluctancy to fail, and of course, even if they have research labs, even if they have sort of test beds and sort of little labs, most of the staff are still going to be involved in their day-to-day business. So they only have a certain limited amount of time to play around with that. So they tend to be cautious. They're very, very interested in new things coming up, but usually they're too much involved in their own environment. And even if they have new ideas, new technology, they will try to use them for themselves. So they try to use that, or use that as a benefit or as a competitive advantage over their competitors. They're not going to go out like, oh, I've got this awesome new technology, let's share that with the world. And they're going to say, oh, it's mine, great. That's competitive advantage over my competitors. Let's keep that to myself. Well, of course, the startup has to approach all of them and try to make the sale with all of them.
Yeah. And a different question to you now is the relationship between startups and mid-sized companies to big companies. So complement, additional to this, your comment. So what type of partnership you think are most sustainable for big corps and small and mid-sized high-tech companies? How can they work together?
What we are doing for ourselves is we have engaged in development partnerships. So we're sort of test bedding our solutions with large corporations. So they are involved in our development. They are our sparring partners when it comes to new ideas. That has a main advantage for us, of course. We get an initial, or we get an instant feedback in terms of market fit. Is what we're doing actually something that a big corporation or that certain corporation will need, that a certain business sector will actually need or not? And of course, working with those big guns, playing around with those big guns also means that we can then use them as a reference. So we can say, okay, we've got an awesome project done with BASF, for example. That's a certain traction for the entire chemical sector. If you've done something with Hoffmann-La Roche, that's something for pharmaceuticals. So you get the instant traction of the large players, and those large players tend to talk to each other. They all know each other. So once you've done a project with 2 or 3 of the larger ones, they will then be able to bring you in their own networks and accompany you there. And on the other hand, for the corporation, they're of course always interested in having new technology, trying new things out, have a very, very low risk approach to something new that might work with them, that might work for them. So from our opinion, or from my opinion, the best idea is of course to sort of engage in a development partnership where both do benefit from the developments or from the startup. Unless of course you're mainly focused on your exit, then you just simply try to sell it. But that's not, at least not our approach. So I guess it's literally it is a development partnerships, having one of those big guns on board to help you along the lines, to help you with new ideas, with use cases, and that's at least how we're doing it.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, one last question I have to you. It's if you could give an advice to big companies and one advice to small and mid-sized companies that are in the beginning of the innovation journey, what would you say?
Well, I think the advice to the big companies would most certainly be try to be open-minded. Don't expect the finished product. That's one thing with the big companies. Don't expect the finished product when the little startup shows up. Have an open mind and join their vision. not necessarily the very, very early pre-seed stage, random ideas, I think that would work greatly. No, it's more a engage in their vision, see what they can actually do. Don't expect the finished product, otherwise it's going to be expensive. If you want to be in early stage, do expect to invest a little bit, whether it's time, whether it's know-how, whether it's money, of course. Really depends on who you are, who you're working with. But as I said, don't expect the finished product. When it comes
for startup, yes, the other side now.
When it comes to the other side, it's quite similar. Don't bullshit. That's a very, very important one. No, seriously, it is. It sounds funny, but it's true. What we see, or I've seen in the past, or with many of those startup events, founders are very, very enthusiastic about their ideas, think they're going to change the world, and when one of those large corporations who's done the business, has been in the business for many, many years, or even their staff tells them, guys, that's not the great idea. Things take a slight different turn. Take that advice. They usually know what they're doing, and they will usually pick up on the flaws in your thoughts. So that's, I think, a good one. Try to get in as much advice from those specialists who've been doing that for a while as you can, and do take that seriously. And then, of course, be persistent. Stay on your game. Always have a look at what others are doing. I won't say copy everybody else, but have a look at what your competitors are doing, what the others are doing, and see how they're doing, how they're operating differently. Just be open-minded. Again, just be open-minded.
That's excellent advice for both
Thank you.
Group of companies. Well, it's really, Adrian, it's really nice to have you here. Thank you very much for your time and for your perspective over the industry. And
thank you very much.
And hope next year, maybe in 2 years, we have another interview and listen more good things about you, and maybe talking about your growth in Latin America and Africa as well, not only the big countries.
Hopefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.